Have you ever been to a zoo? You see animals from all over the world, living in enclosures designed to mimic their natural habitats. We watch them, we study them, we take pictures. But what if I told you that, not so long ago, it wasn't just animals in those enclosures? What if I told you there were people? This is the dark and often forgotten history of human zoos. It's a shocking concept, I know. But for nearly a century, from the late 1800s to the mid-1900s, human zoos were a massively popular form of entertainment across Europe and America. Millions of people flocked to world's fairs, colonial exhibitions, and even standalone attractions to gaze at other human beings displayed like exotic creatures. So how did this even start? Well, it all ties back to the age of colonialism and the rise of what's now called scientific racism. As European powers expanded their empires across Africa, Asia, and the Americas, they encountered diverse cultures and peoples. Instead of seeking to understand them as equals, a twisted ideology emerged. Western scientists and thinkers began creating racial hierarchies, placing white Europeans at the top and categorizing everyone else as less evolved or primitive. Human zoos became the physical manifestation of this toxic idea. They were living, breathing propaganda. Promoters and showmen like the infamous Carl Hagenbeck, who ironically also pioneered more humane enclosures for animals, would travel to colonies and recruit, or often forcibly abduct, indigenous people. Men, women, and children were taken from their homes in places like the Philippines, Congo, and Greenland, and shipped thousands of miles away. Once they arrived in cities like Paris, London, or New York, they were put on display in staged, often inaccurate, native villages. They were given props like spears and huts, and instructed to perform rituals, dances, or daily activities for crowds of paying spectators. Imagine the profound humiliation and dehumanization. These were individuals with families, cultures, and rich inner lives reduced to a spectacle. They were stared at, prodded, and mocked, all while being held in captivity far from home. One of the most heart-wrenching stories is that of Otabenga. He was a Mbuti pygmy man from the Congo, whose village was destroyed by colonial forces. In 1904, he was brought to the United States and exhibited at the St. Louis World's Fair. It was a massive event, and he was part of a display meant to showcase savagery. But things got even worse. 2 years later, he was taken to the Bronx Zoo in New York City and placed in the Monkey House exhibit. For a time, Otabenga was displayed in a cage with an orangutan. The sign on his enclosure read, "The African Pygmy Otabenga, age 23 years, height 4 feet 11 inches, weight 103 pounds. The public was fascinated. Huge crowds gathered to see him. While some people were outraged and black clergymen protested vehemently, many others saw it as acceptable entertainment and a scientific curiosity. After immense pressure, Otabenga was eventually released from the zoo, but the trauma was inescapable. He was moved to a black orphanage and later to Virginia, where he tried to adapt to American life. But he longed for home, and the path back to the Congo was blocked by the outbreak of World War I. Tragically, in 1916, Otabenga, a man who had been displayed as less than human, ended his own life. His story is a powerful and painful reminder of the real human cost of these exhibitions. And he was not alone. There were countless others. Take the Igorot village at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. Over 1,000 Filipinos from various ethnic groups were brought to America. The Igorot people, in particular, were sensationalized for their practice of eating dog meat, which was part of their ceremonial tradition. The exhibition promoters exploited this, marketing them as dog-eating savages to draw in horrified yet fascinated crowds. The conditions were poor, and many of the Filipinos died from diseases they had no immunity to, far from their homes and families. These exhibitions weren't just in America. In Paris, the Jardin d'Acclimatation, a park that still exists today, was a major hub for human exhibitions. From 1877 onwards, it regularly featured villages of Nubians, Zulus, and Kalmyks. People would come to picnic and spend the day observing other humans as if they were a new species of antelope. The 1931 Paris Colonial Exposition was perhaps the peak of this phenomenon. It attracted over 30 million visitors, all coming to see recreated temples and villages populated by people from France's colonies, all designed to reinforce the idea of French superiority and the civilizing mission of colonialism. So why did people go? Why was this so popular? It's a complex mix of factors. There was genuine curiosity, of course. In an era before television or the internet, this was the only way for most people to see individuals from distant lands. But it was a curiosity filtered through a lens of racial prejudice. The exhibitions confirmed the biases of the time. They made visitors feel secure in their own perceived superiority. It was entertainment, education, and propaganda all rolled into one. It told a simple, comforting, and deeply false story that the world was neatly ordered, with civilized people at the top and primitive people at the bottom, who needed to be governed and controlled for their own good. As the 20th century wore on, the popularity of human zoos began to wane. The rise of cinema brought moving images of foreign lands into people's lives in a new way. More importantly, public consciousness started to shift. People began to question the morality of displaying human beings. The horrors of World War II and the Holocaust delivered a devastating blow to the pseudoscience of racial hierarchies. The idea of a master race was exposed for the evil that it was. The post-war era also saw the beginning of decolonization as nations around the world fought for and won their independence. The power dynamic that had allowed human zoos to flourish was crumbling. The last widely acknowledged human zoo was at the 1958 Brussels World's Fair, called Expo 58. Belgium, still a colonial power at the time, constructed a Congolese village where men, women, and children were put on display. Visitors would throw money and bananas into the enclosure, treating the people there like animals. This time, however, there was a global outcry. The exhibition was condemned internationally and became a source of deep shame. It marked the end of an era. But has the spirit of the human zoo truly disappeared? That's a question we need to ask ourselves. Think about the way some forms of reality TV sensationalize different cultures. Think about slum tourism, where tourists pay to visit impoverished areas. Think about how indigenous peoples are sometimes still portrayed in media as primitive relics of the past, rather than as contemporary communities with their own voices and struggles. The legacy of human zoos is a legacy of dehumanization. It's a reminder of how easily othering can lead to exploitation and cruelty. It's a stark warning about the dangers of scientific racism and the stories we tell ourselves about people who are different. The history is uncomfortable and it's ugly, but it's crucial that we don't forget it. Remembering the stories of Otabenga and the thousands like him is the first step toward ensuring that we never, ever repeat this dark chapter of our shared past. We must actively challenge stereotypes and recognize the full humanity in every single person, regardless of where they come from. Thank you so much for watching and for taking the time to learn about this difficult but important topic. If you found this video insightful, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.